Chrono in GvG's is kind of similar in mechanics to how you play it in open field, but it's I guess you have to be tighter about everything and faster, which is the same for most classes, but I guess I'll start with weapon skills and how to use them. So in open field, I know when I was playing Chrono in open field, I kind of just threw out focus pulls and grab wells, and they kind of just hit because stab's not always up. But that's not the case in GvG's because a lot of people are better. So the main thing that I would say to get used to is looking at enemy boon bars, because if the single target doesn't have stab, a lot of boon rip in GvG's is like area like break enchantments and banish. So if they don't have stab, there's a high likelihood that the people around them won't have stab as well. So always just look at their boon bar to make sure your CC hits, because if you throw a focus pull out and everybody has stab, you're going to get nothing, and it's going to be a wasted resource. So yeah, look at the single target's bar for stab, and when they don't have stab, that's when I like to CC either Sword 3, Shield 5, or Focus 4. The good thing about Focus 4 is you can kind of just like set it, and then you can let it sit there for a while, and then when they don't have stab, then you can pull. So one thing that I like doing is if we're going for a push and we're spiking on the target, I will throw it down at their feet, and they'll be immobed or whatever, and then they'll stun break. Then you wait for their dodge roll, and then pull it after they dodge roll, and pull them back into the spike, and just they'll die for sure. Another thing is you're running sword, and sword 3 is actually an area immob. It's not just one target. So if you focus pull a group of people and then sword 3, you immob all of them. So that's just a combo that I like to use, just to lock people. Another main thing, another reason you're so strong is because you have Boon Rip and CC all in the same class, so you can kind of make sure your CC hits by ripping boons first and then CCing. Like, always rip the boons first and then CC. A trick I like to do is if you're running Phantasmal Disenchanter, you can throw it out and you'll actually see a little visual cue. You'll see like a bunch of tiny numbers where the projectile bounces between people. So if you throw the Disenchanter on the single target and the single target still has stab, there's a chance that that Disenchanter rips stab around it. So a trick I like to do is throw down Disenchanter and then throw down the focus pull, and then after the damage numbers from the Disenchanter hit, then focus pull, because even if the single target still has stab after that for some reason, chances are one of the people that got hit by the Disenchanter won't have stab, so you can focus pull and get one of them, and then you can like sword 3 immob or something and capitalize on that. A main thing that I do in GvGs that I don't do in open field is, again, I kind of just throw CC out in open field and it hits. Doesn't really work. And I think the main thing that people need to get in their head is syncing your CC with big abilities. So you throw down focus pulls in well spikes or in big damage, like you kind of just want to look at your DPS players, and I will like focus pull on top of a warrior axe 5ing, like for example, and I'll just pull people into the Beyblade and get them killed, rather than trying to essentially lead with that CC. You want to enable your DPS players to do the damage that they're trying to do. Shield 5 is great for that on well spikes because it just locks them in place if you're close enough. focus pulling into well spikes, grav welling, stuff like that. You always want to aim your CC for the most part, not always, but you want to aim it for the end of pushes. So if you're pushing into a group, you want to aim your grav well at the end of that push where we'll probably catch somebody and kill them. So yeah, big. I would die for sure. You just want to make it so that the single target and hopefully the people at the end of your friendly team's push. So if your team is pushing from here to say like you want to aim like right there. Like you're pushing into them, you want to catch people on the end of that push and get them killed. DPS players catch up, they can't move. DPS players kill them. Another big thing outside of Gravwell and your other really good CC is IOL. That was a really powerful res utility, but you need to be very, very vocal, and your team needs to be vocal for you to know when to use it. So essentially, you're like the safety net to all the other res utility. Like if your Tempest can't glyph, they'll call it out, and then if you don't hear a sig or something, you go because IOL is so fast. You can usually just react to them calling that they're erupted, and then send it anyways to try and get that person up. You can also res 3 people at a time. I would say if there's 3 people down, just let it rip unless you hear your Tempest calling that they have Earth Glyph or something like that, at which point Weapon Stone cancel the cast. Yeah, so you're kind of this catch-all res utility that needs to be quick with reactions and recognize if somebody has a signet on that person. So what I always like to do is if somebody goes down and I don't hear something in the first like half a second, I'm going to start casting. And then if they call it and I know it's going to land, I will stow my IOL so I don't use it. Another thing that you need to realize is if a person is getting cleaved out and somebody has a signet and you know that it's not going to land, you need to step on their toes and say, I'm IOLing. Because, like, you need to make really fast reactions. Like, you need to see that if they're getting cleaved and the signet's not going to land, but your IOL is, you need to tell them to stow and that you will get it. Because it's much better if you get it and they stow instead of them being dead and then the signet landing, like, quarter of a second after or whatever. I like to use C-Split either with Gravwell or IOL. Typically, I will continuum split IOL if we are on the back foot and like 2 people go down in the first spike and it's all going to hell. I will C-Split IOL so I have it later in the round. And then I'll just try and get stuff out as fast as possible. Like if you're on the back foot, start spending your resources really fast. Like start throwing your null fields, start throwing Disenchanter, Boonrip, CC, because you're trying to turn the tide of that as fast as possible. So at that time, I would use C-Split for IOL and maybe fit other things in, but lead with the IOL. And then if you are on the front foot, then I would use C-Split for Gravwell. And again, aim Gravwell where your other damage classes are coordinating. So like on the edge of winds and well spikes, on the edge of pushes, stuff like that. Another big thing think most guilds run different things, but another universal thing is null field. Um, null field, I try to aim whenever we are clashing, so it hits both enemies and allies because it cleanses conditions as well. So if you can't hit both, hit the enemy. Don't try and like Condi cleanse on stack. Uh, so ideally, you hit both the enemy and you, so you get cleanses, but always prioritize ripping boons off of the enemy rather than cleansing conditions. Uh, I have run both Mimic and Disenchanter. I think both are valid. If I run Mimic before the round, like in stealth phase, I will precast Mimic so that on first engage I can just throw down Null Field, and then I'll have my next Null Field ready for like the Continuum Split combo. I think a bread and butter Continuum Split combo is Shield 5, Continuum Split, Gravwell, Null Field, Shatter. So the reason you lead with Shield 5 is because it gives quickness at the start of the cast, allowing you to just do everything a lot faster. Another I will do is I will cast Focus Pull and then Gravwell, and then like Sword 3 maybe. But the thing with Focus Pull is it actually has an ICD of 1 second before you can pull. So what I will do is I will throw down the Focus Pull, and then at the end of the cast I will start the Continuum Split, throw down Gravwell, pull people into the Gravwell, and then like Null Field and Sword 3. My idea with Continuum Split is to shove as much value in it as humanly possible, because it's free cooldowns. A trick I will do sometimes is if the enemy first down is there, I will Sword 3 on the first down to get a clone up, just to like fit way more into the Continuum Split than just the Shield 5 Gravwell Null Field. Because on first down, generally I Sword 3 always, and you might as well get a Continuum Split out of it. And the reason you Sword 3 on first down is because it's going to get glyphed, right? It's going to get lightning glyphed into their stack, but if you can hit it with an immob before it gets glyphed, it will still be immobed in their stack, and their stack will, in the best of cases, just kind of run away from them and leave them there, or in the best of cases for you. And then you just get a free target again and get it down because it just can't move, and commanders that aren't aware will just run away from it. So what I will do is I will throw down Sword 3, and I'll wait till the invuln frames from being down are gone, and then I will immob. That's a good trick to use. Alright, the next thing is defensive skills. Always chain your defensive skills if you're going to be single target, because you're pretty tanky as Chrono, and the reason for this is A, you're running generally tanky stats, and B, you have a lot of really great active defenses. So what I will do is I will chain defensive skills. So common one that I will do is dodge into shield 4. And then if I block something and I'm absolutely waiting through something, maybe another dodge, weapon swap, something like that. But your defensives are shield 4, dodge, and blurred frenzy. So try and chain those invuln and block frames so they never have time to get any like CC on you or immob or stuff like that. Yeah, just try and survive as single target as long as possible. Another good trick to use if you're single target is to Sword 3 out of harm. So if you are single target and the entire enemy Zerg is training on you, usually your guild is training on their single target, so their single target is going to be separated from them. And what I will do is I will Sword 3 onto the single target just to get closer to my stack and put my stack between the enemy Zerg and me. And then you can continue to either chain defensives or start going back to your regular CC Boonrip stuff. Let's see, so talked about null field, talked about continuum split. If you're using Disenchanter, you use it in combination with the heal. That heal, if you can heal yourself with it, good. If not, it's literally just there to make your Disenchanter less of a cooldown. So I would say if your Disenchanter, it resets 15 seconds of your Disenchanter timer. I would say if it's 10 seconds or above, just go ahead and heal and then get that Disenchanter up and get the Disenchanter going again. Because a lot of your Boonrip is tied to Disenchanter should you use it. And just throwing out as many as possible is ideal. Before I move on, are there any questions? Six. Okay. All right. Focus pulls. I've talked about the first focus pull, which is at the end of a push on the single target, like on top of them, and then if they dodge away, pull them back into the spike. Another way you can do it is just like if you notice the single target doesn't have stab and they're running away, it is a 600 range pull, so try and pull them into you. I know a habit of open field mesmers, especially me, before I started GvGing, was just kind of to throw the focus pull slightly away from their stack. And if it pulled them sick, I don't know what it accomplished, but that's what I did. That's not ideal. Because it's 600 range and it's so far away, you just want to make that single target feel anxiety. So you want to like pull as close to your stack as you can, and then be very audible if you have pulled people. Oh no. Take that back out, please. Okay, thank you. Because GVGs are hectic, commanders have a lot of things to focus on. If you focus pull like 1 or 2 people into your stack, I will shout that I have pulled them into our stack so that we can capitalize on it faster. A good time for this is if we have dropped wins and we're like sitting in our wins, I will pull them into us and into our wins. I will very audibly say that they are pulled into us. Sometimes I sound like an idiot, but it gets the point across. So yeah, those are pretty much the 2 instances I use focus pulls. I either use them at the end of pushes or trying to just create an opportunity for a DPS players to capitalize on. So trying to pull them into us, let our melee DPS kill them, or at least do some damage on them. If we get a down, I will throw a focus pull on top of that down and just pull people into it because people are going to be cleaving this down. It's what you do. So you might as well get some extra damage and maybe extra downs off of that one down. It also helps to interrupt any hand reses that people are going for. The other build that I tend to run that's not Disenchanter is I will run Heal Well and Mimic. So I have this bar, and if I'm not running Disenchanter, I will throw Heal Well. Depending on if we're low, I will aim it slightly in front of people to get the final tick, because the final tick of healing is actually huge. Does a ton of group healing. If not that, I will sometimes aim it in, if a group is really immobilize heavy, I will aim it to cleanse a group of people. Like if they're running a Soul Beast and they muddy terrain, I will heal well on top of that muddy terrain to cleanse the immob. Or if somebody's caught out, I'll throw it to cleanse and just relieve some pressure off of that person. The great thing about this set that Disenchanter doesn't have is this set is very fluid because you can use the Mimic for Null Field or IOL. So also because if you do use it for Null Field, you'll just have 2 Null Fields and you have Heal Well, which is just a lot higher group cleanses overall. So if your group is running into a lot of Condi pressure, it's something to think about. If not, I will run Disenchanter and Signet and just play like normal single target Chrono stuff. Because you run Domination, all of your shadows rip boons. No, you don't run a stun break typically on Chrono. If you feel that you are getting CC'd during a lot of abilities, you could probably take Stab Mantra, or you could run Chaos, so all of your shatters give you Stab to like cover important casts. But no, typically you do not run a stun break. Because you run Domination, it's generally almost always Domination and Chronomancer. The middle one can change depending on situations. I've seen many run, and some are a lot more niche than others, but typically you run Illusions. Because you run Domination, though, all of your shatters are going to rip a boon. So while you are in Continuum Split, just like slam your hand on the keyboard and shatter all of your shatters while in Continuum Split. It's just free boon rip. 240 radius around you. So you need to be like in melee distance for that boon rip to hit, but it's still free boon rip. It should be worth noting that if you shatter with F1, the F1 is a delayed second shatter that also rips a boon, but it is where you originally shatter, so place it where it's going to hit twice. If you run Mimic and Heal Well, typically I run Seize the Moment. So not only do your shatters rip boons, they're also a pretty important part of quickness uptime for your party, because typically you're in a Tempest party without a Scrapper. So all you have to rely on is a Firebrand for quickness, so you can kind of cover quickness for your party. You can kind of cover quickness for your party a little bit with the lack of a Scrapper. So while it's ideal to shatter for Boon Rip, also worth noting that you provide quickness for your group as well. What else? IOL. Okay. I forgot to mention this. IOL can be retargeted. So if you're casting and somebody gets punted, you can move your IOL with them to get them up. But this is only if you have instacast, because if you have fast with range indicator or normal, it won't retarget. So for Mesmer, it's kind of crucial to have instacast. Actually, it's extremely crucial because retargeting illusion is very important. So if you're not running Instacast, I would definitely highly recommend switching to it, because if you go to illusion like 2 down states and they get tornadoed, you want to be able to move your crosshair and still get them up. You and Tempest are responsible for getting any down states that get punted or something like that, because one of the downsides of Guardian Signet is it can't be retargeted. So as soon as something gets punted, if you don't hear somebody calling that they have glyph or like anything, I would just start going for the illusion. I think I think one of the main difficulties from Mesmer comes from illusion, like knowing when and when not to illusion, and one of the biggest parts to make your job easier is clear comms with other res utilities. So you need to make sure that your other res utility is very vocal on whether or not they're going to get a res off, so you can go and choose whether or not to IOL. Yeah. Also, if you run Mimic and you take Seize the Moment, you can quickness shatter so your IOL goes off insanely fast. And lastly, the last thing I have to talk about is Continuum Split again, which is don't Continuum Split if your groups are going to cross, because that it could be that it is 240 radius. I find it honestly pretty hard to miss. It could be that you're like out of range, or they die before you IOL, or something of that nature. I don't know. I'd have to see the examples of when it's happening to be able to say for sure. But yeah, if I do it at 1200 range. If you have on Instacast and you're at the very edge of 1200 range and you start casting and you move out of 1200, it will be out of range. So that's one of the downsides of Instacast. Like, it will retarget wherever your crosshair ends up, not where it started. But it also means that you can retarget on punted down states. I think Instacast is absolutely invaluable, and that's one of the downsides to Instacast, but its benefit is way more important. Yeah. If you get illusioned, look at your bar. When the illusion timer starts blinking, like that little buff that says illusion, that means you have 5 seconds, and then when it starts blinking fast, that means you have 3 seconds before you go down. So be vocal. You're all on chrono, so highly doubtful that you're going to get illusioned, but please call your illusion timers so that the commander can play around it. Continuum Split. So Continuum Split, if you actually look at it, has health. So if that gets destroyed, the things you were casting do not get reset. They just go on cooldown, and you are immediately ported back to where it was destroyed, which is in enemy damage, which is not good, and you will probably end up dying. So make sure that you are in a safe spot, and you will be in a safe spot when Continuum Split ends. So it's much better if your two groups are crossing, to, instead of using Continuum Split there, to dodge through and then use Continuum Split on the other side where you are safe. I definitely, when I was learning, did Continuum Split and then got hit with the entire freight train of the enemy guild as my Continuum Split got destroyed, and I got bounced back, which is unfortunate. So make sure that you are in a safe spot, and you will be in a safe spot when the Continuum Split ends. If you think it's going to be destroyed, like if you know it's going to be destroyed, preemptively start casting Sword 2. Because you'll blink back and then just like mash dodge, do anything to get out of there, but prepare to be thrown into a ton of enemy damage if you think it's going to get destroyed. So yeah. Also, don't be afraid of ending Continuum Split early. Like, if you get the things out that you need to, just tap 4 again, and then get back to your group. If that needs to happen. I think that's all I have. Are there any questions or more specific things? Sick.
Do you ever run non-minstrels, or do you ever you go like wanderers or some have you ever does power ever work or anything like that?
So the main thing with Chrono is your job isn't tied to doing damage or healing or anything like that. It's tied to CC and Boon Rip, which, you know, your big final damage on your Gravwell does 3 damage because of the nerfs to CC. So you can run Wanderers. It doesn't really matter so long as you don't die. I've run Wanderers, I've run Minstrels, I've run Celestial, and the reason you run Celestial is for the immob duration on Sword 3. Which is always good. So yeah, I think you can definitely run Wanderers, you can run Minstrels, you can run Celestial, you can run anything so long as you don't die.
How do you get the immobilize on Sword 3? Is that like the second part of it?
Yeah, so if you are targeting somebody and you Sword 3, it will spawn a clone on them, and then tapping it again will swap you in the clone, and it will immobilize in that small radius.
Oh, okay.
So what I will do is I will use it as an engage, honestly, kind of like Reaper Shroud 2. So if the commander is calling to push into single target, Reapers a lot of times will Shroud 2 into the single target. Yeah. And I will do that with Sword 3, and then immediately spam my Shatters to essentially lock the target down and then rip all of their boons and people around them. So you can kind of... I always aim to get to the target like maybe half a second, a quarter second before, probably a quarter second before the other people, so it stops moving as they hit it. Just to account for like walking time and stuff, because it is an instant port. Another tip.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. With Sword 3 is to Sword 3 out of Untamed baby cages and DH baby cages. It's really helpful.
Ben was asking any tips for using Veil.
I don't tend to use Veil. My commander never really calls for it in GvGs, but what I will do is I throw it down right in front of my commander's feet. So a lot of Chronos in open field, if the commander is right where I am and the commander calls for Veil, they'll throw it like here, and then the commander will run forward. I tend not to do that. I should have probably mimicked that for a effect, but I will cast it like right in front of them as they go through, because the less time the enemy has to see that you're like switching movement, the better. Because if they like turn around and go for a veil behind, like they do a little switch and you throw it like way in front of them, they're going to see you coming more easily and have a chance to react. Whereas aiming it right at the driver's feet, like it's harder to read that movement than it is having that bit of delay before it actually goes down. So I would just say throw it as close to the driver's feet as possible without, completely missing them. There is actually a bit of leeway on it. Like if you throw it, like it's kind of in the middle of the driver rather than in front of them, they will still get stealth. Like if you cross either side, you'll get stealth. So yeah, always try and aim it as close to the driver as possible. I've seen groups chain veils. I think if you're going for a long form stealth like that, it's better to just use gyros or smoke bombs. They need to be full health plus like one barrier. They alternatively, if you're on warrior, is it defiant stance that's the heal? I think it is. Yeah. Hopefully you want more than 101, because then they would just be left on 1 health, which isn't the best. But yeah. It will take 100% of their health. If they have barrier, that counts as overheal, and it won't kill them. If you're a warrior and you have defiant stance, popping defiant stance before IOL goes down will not only not kill you, it will full heal you. So it's helpful to keep in mind that if you get IOL, save your defiant stance for the end of the IOL. Um, let's see, what else do people run? Mimic, IOL, Veil. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. The Days mantra. I'm gonna go ahead and say no. Unless you're like some like inhuman person that can like see a signet and click on them and like they have no stab and interrupt it. Like the thing about Daze is it overwrites other CCs. So if they're stunned, they'll just automatically become dazed and then be able to walk again. That's not good. Yeah. It's interrupts, which I get it from like an idea, like it procs absorption sigil, there's synergy with domination, stuff like that, but you'd be much better off running Mimic for more null field, or Disenchanter for more boon rip, or Veil for utility. When Chrono got after Chrono got the ability to shatter back, I think if you were to run Chaos, I think a much more valuable trait rather than Chaotic Interruption is Bountiful Disillusionment, because all of a sudden you have Stab to cover really important casts, so you can like shatter while you're IOLing to like cover the cast of it so it doesn't get interrupted. But I mean, yeah, it would reduce the cooldown of stuff, but it's just like random, which is the unfortunate thing. feedback. I am a fan of feedback. It is a reflect, so if the enemy group is running Lich, you can place it and reflect all of the Lich autos. Also, if you feel like running Inspiration, there's traits that synergize with feedback. You can throw it on top of it down, and then go for a hand res and try and get them up. I have reflected quite a few Lich autos with feedback, but I don't typically run it because scrappers usually have that covered with defense field. But it is a fun skill, and it's definitely fun in open field seeing like a full Minstrel's Chrono all of a sudden get really high on the DPS meter, and it's like, what the hell, how'd you do that? And it's like, haha, I pressed feedback. Yeah. Also, it's instacast, which makes it really easy to fit in a continuum split combo. But yeah, I typically always keep IOL and null field, and then in the third slot, I've run a lot of things. If you're in open field, you could always do portal shenanigans. You can do feedback, veil, disenchanter, mimic. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things to run on Mesmer to like throw off your opponent. Because if they don't expect it, then, you know. It should also be worth noting that the Focus 5 destroys projectiles. Not really something that comes into play, but I'll throw it. If there's like liches, it'll probably get destroyed. But it is worth noting that just throwing anything, because normally it's kind of a useless skill, but, and it still is, but it gets a little bit more value from projectile destruction. Oh, yeah, yeah, renegades with quickness, rip, stab, which is also nice. But yeah, the main things to focus on is syncing your CC with other damaging abilities. Oh, interesting. I did not know that, actually. That's cool. But yeah, the main thing is that's different from GvG Chrono versus open field is open field Chrono is kind of seen as this like you lead with a focus pull to try and get a range spike. Oh, sorry. And you always lead with your CC and follow up with damage. You definitely want to sync your CC with your damage classes to enable them to do as much DPS as possible, because it's really hard to hit a target if they just keep moving around the arena, whereas if they're standing still, they can just kill them really quickly. So that's your job. You enable your DPS players. And then if somebody goes down, you go into combat medic mode and try and get them up. So yeah. That's all I have, I think, unless anybody has questions. Dick.
That was really great, Kalus. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalus.
Yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot more, and I've been playing it for a while. yeah. So if no one else has any questions, it is yeah, everyone make sure to thank Kalus for giving his time to for this lesson.